afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mike here, bringing you a review today of a 2015 Toyota Corolla. And I know this is the big one, the one that everybody's been asking for. It's like every video I make, everyone's like, Mike, when are you going to review the new Corolla? Mike, are you ever going to review a 2015 Corolla? Well, your prayers have been answered as well as mine, because I finally get to drive this car today, and I absolutely cannot wait. All right, so checking out the exterior of the 2015 Toyota Corolla. Well, you can see up here it's got some headlights and you know, some other stuff. I assume that's where the air goes, is down there or something into the engine. And then you got these wheels here, and I see what this is for lightweight purposes. I see, that makes sense now. But you know, it's a very unassuming styling and design. I think it looks pretty decent though. You know, the word that I would use to describe this car is unoffensive. You know, it doesn't really have any design whatsoever. It's just kind of a car. You know, it has to have a midsection with 4 doors, it has to have a front for the engine, and then it has to have a trunk. And basically, when you follow that type of a design language, this is what you end up with. But overall, and in all seriousness, it's not necessarily an ugly car or anything like that. I mean, it doesn't look great, it's not exactly striking, but at the same time, you know, it doesn't really have to be. It's a Toyota Corolla, so it doesn't look too bad, and I think it's decent, you know. And being serious for a second, the front end, I think, you know, with the new design language from Toyota, it looks pretty good. I don't know, I honestly kind of think the old Corolla looked a little bit better, the previous generation, but this front end, you know, this is how most of these kind of small to mid-sized compact sedans look these days, so it very much fits in with the crowd. And you know, it looks pretty decent. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and check out the interior. All right, so moving on to the inside of the car, and just keep in mind, you know, this is a bargain basement car. This is an absolute base model rental fleet version, so you're not going to get a ton of crazy stuff in here. But to me, first thing I noticed, this blue here, you know, to me, very reminiscent of a BMW i8. You know, I get a lot of i8 when I sit in here, so that's definitely a plus. You know, you got the white kind of in black color scheme, color combo. I like that as well. The piano black here is nice. And, you know, honestly, for being a base model, you press on this stuff, and it's not that bad. Like, it feels relatively solid. It looks decent here if it was cleaned up. Obviously, this car has been beat to all hell. You get the dashboard here, kind of like a rubber, but it has this nice little, you know, stitching just to show you that they care. Gauges, again, nothing special here, but they look good. They're easy to read, which is important for people who buy this car. And then moving on to the steering wheel, you know, my only gripe with this is that this is actually nice in here. This isn't bad. You know, this thing with the stitching actually feels nice and soft. The buttons are easy to reach. Like I said, my complaint though is this outer rim here, the total circumference of the wheel is really, really bad. Like, this is like the cheapest molded plastic I've ever seen in my life. It's something that, like, literally, it's the wheel off of a Fisher-Price little children's ride-along toy. It's so bad. But the grips here aren't too bad. They actually feel decent. But this plastic is just so, like, even you look at the texture of it, it's just, oh boy. And then you move down here. I also don't like this. The cruise control is down here on this little stalk. I much prefer it when it's just a button on the steering wheel, but what are you going to do? No major complaints there. Everything else, pretty standard. You know, you do have automatic mirrors and all that good stuff. The only thing, it doesn't have automatic seats. These are all manual and everything, so that might bother some people. Doesn't really bother me. And the other thing you don't get is heated seats, which might go either in there or in one of those spots that you see are empty. So, you know, the heated seats would probably be my only complaint as far as the options go, just because even the base model cars and a lot of manufacturers, you do get that nowadays. It's kind of more of a standard thing, but, you know, not too bad. My other major complaint is this thing I hate. When I got in the car, it actually took me like 2 or 3 seconds to figure out what the hell's going on. So you got to move this over. Like, look, it's like a gear shift. You move this over. That's your reverse, neutral, drive. Now you can just do the standard, like, and like push it down. You know, when you're in a normal car, you just go park, pull it straight back, and it'll automatically stop and drive. You can do that with this, but only if you push it over. You see, you can't just pull it straight back. So you have to go over, and then you can just bring it straight down. So, and you know, this thing obviously is cheap and flimsy, but that's no big deal. But I don't like this whole thing where you got to do this, and you know, I don't know. I don't like that at all. I think it should be a more simple system. That's going to confuse a lot of grandmas for sure. They're not going to know how to get and drive. Other interior stuff, backseat space, not bad. You get a nice little armrest back there, and the seats, you know, these are the cloth, like base, like I said, bargain basement seats, but they're relatively comfortable. You know, a very large base, so they accommodate many weights, and also the bolstering, not too bad here as I'm sitting in the seat and kind of slide around. Up here, though, one good thing about this car is it does come with a really nice little backup camera. I don't know if it'll do this without the car actually being on. Yeah, sure, there it is. So you can see, you know, pretty good little camera, nice little screen here. So again, for the base model car, you do get a lot of good stuff, and it's pretty good, pretty easy to live with, comfortable, and not that bad to look at. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and start her up and go for a drive. All right, so before we do that, I just wanted to show you guys, because this is the only like kind of average consumer car I've ever done. I wanted to be pretty in-depth with the consumer advice here. And you know, sitting behind myself, I'm about 5'9", and you can see I have plenty of room back here. So I'm actually really impressed with the back seat space for a small sedan. And then I also just wanted to show the trunk really quick, and you can just press the button on your key fob here to open this and go ahead. So you can see it's got a lot of trunk room as well. So, you know, pretty impressed with this. Ooh, nice little spider webs in there. There you go. Comes with free spider webs straight from Toyota. This thing, all right, now we're closed. But, you know, pretty impressive space for a small car like this, I gotta be honest. All right, so let's go ahead and start her up. Now, you do just get this old school key, you know, no fancy key fobs or push button start or anything. And listen to that mighty 4-cylinder roar to life. Alright, so setting off here in the 2015 Toyota Corolla, and you know, there's pretty much no adjustment period at all when you get into this car. It's incredibly easy to see out of and drive, and it feels really small around. You know, of course, I'm used to driving a Challenger, which is an enormous vehicle, both in weight and in overall size. So, you know, it's gone from that to pretty much anything is easy, but you know, this is just so easy to drive, and the steering's like super light and everything. It's been a while since I've set foot in like an economy kind of normal car, but this very much feels like it. All right, so went over those speed bumps there, and the ride is pretty good, pretty complacent and everything, but let's see about this acceleration. Now, keep in mind that we're dealing with essentially no horsepower here, so don't expect anything great, but we'll see. So foot all the way down, there's a downshift. There's a good little noise to it. By the way, we're almost to 60. There's 60, 64, 5, almost 70. So that's not too bad, by the way. And that was true. Everything I was saying, that was about 70 miles an hour, and it took, I don't know how long, I have to go back and look. But, you know, actually, I gotta say, I gotta be honest just for a second. You know, although to me, of course, and to most people who drive a quick car, that feels incredibly slow, it's not that bad. And because we are dealing with essentially no horsepower, you know, maybe because it's lightweight or because of the gearing or whatever, you know, it does an okay job of masking the fact that it's a really slow car, I gotta say. Now, I should mention that this car does have a sport mode, but I'm pretty sure that that only exists so when this car eventually gets handed down to the 15-year-old in the family after 130,000 miles, that he can pretend like the car is fast. But if you wanted to use sport mode, well, let's try it out. Oh, that's neutral. There's sport. Now, how do I... Okay, so you just down and up. So you hear a little rev there. So it's not the easiest system to use because, again, the weird gear shifter thing, and you tap up. No, you go... I don't even know how to use it. All right, so we're back in drive mode here because obviously I had no idea how to properly operate the sport mode, but you have to do something, and it wasn't to push up and down like a normal kind of slap shift system. This was different. I don't know what it was doing, but regardless, it's not going to be fast anyway, so there's really no point using it. Some other things I definitely want to mention here, you know, the road noise is actually pretty decent. You know, I don't feel like I have to shout in order for the camera to pick up my voice, and, you know, considering these doors are about 2 inches thick and the A-pillar I can actually just show you there is like that. But yeah, I'm pretty impressed with that. So it's got some pretty good sound deadening here. You know, it's relatively quiet inside the car. You don't hear a lot of other vehicles or anything outside of the car. So I'd say that in that category, it's pretty good, pretty comfortable. But one of the things I have to keep in mind when I drive this car is that to the people who buy this and that are in the market for a vehicle like this, it's very much an appliance. It's just transportation from point A to point B, nothing else. And, you know, it's no different to them than a toaster or a refrigerator or anything else that they need in their lives. So with that in mind, and I got to keep that in mind, because if I didn't remember that, you know, I'd be just constantly saying, oh, this car sucks and it's boring and this and that and the other thing. But when you keep that in mind and you realize that this is a car, an average car for average people that don't give a shit about going fast, you kind of start to understand the design and the execution of the design for this car. You know, you look at the exterior, very unassuming, unoffensive, as I stated, and it works. You look at the interior, not a lot of flashy stuff. You don't get a whole lot in here, but again, it works, and it's durable because this is a rental car and people have, God knows, beat the living hell out of it, and it's held up pretty good so far. Now the car, I mean, it's got a ton of miles on it, even though the car's only 1 year old, so I'm not gonna give this car a free pass just because it's new. It's been through a lot. So speaking of that steering feel for a second that I mentioned earlier, you know, it's a little bit weird. Like, you turn in for a corner and, okay, so see, look at that downshift there. Now, that's what I actually do like about this car. Even though we're not dealing with a lot of power, it gives you the downshifts and it's not dangerously slow. You know what I mean? Some cars, and that might seem like a silly thing to say, but some cars, honestly, let's check out this corner here. I don't know if the tire squeal would be picked up in the camera, but hold on, we'll induce a little bit more squeal here. So it's actually not that bad. You know, obviously you get some body roll. The steering feel, like I said, is a little bit weird. You have to continually make steering adjustments throughout the corner. You know, it's not just turn in and then it goes and you kind of have a feel for the corner. There's not a whole lot of communication between the wheel, the front wheels, and the driver. So you have to constantly kind of adjust. And again, this is just for me, someone who's taking corners way faster than any normal person who buys a Corolla is ever gonna do it. But like I was gonna say, you know, it does make the most of its power and it's not dangerously slow. You know, some cars, you step on it like you need to merge or whatever, and it just takes forever, and it's actually dangerous. This car, you know, on these back roads here, actually, you know, it's in the right gear a lot of the time, and at least it's somewhat eager to give you that downshift and to give you that power. So since I've been driving this car for a few days now, I can actually offer some more insight than in a regular review, and I will say it's pretty good to live with. You know, I noticed the other night when I was driving it, the headlights are great in this, and especially the high beams, super bright. The projection is really long, so I'm actually impressed by that. The sound system, again, even though this is base model, the sound system was pretty good. It has a decent quality to it, a nice little bass. You know, it's not just totally pathetic like a lot of base cars are. So, you know, it's got a lot of good stuff to live with. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention that I forgot that I liked about this car, and now I'm forgetting. See, it's not that great living with this car. You already forget the things that you like, but you know, overall, on a serious note, it's not that bad, and that's kind of what I keep having to say about this car. It's not that bad, but you know, for me, essentially, you got to remember that this car is brand new off the showroom floor is like 15 grand. So, you know, with that in mind, you get a lot for your money. And I will say this, you know, and this is the one thing that I come away with after driving this car for a few days. You know, the bargain basement economy cars have come a long way in the last 5 to 10 years. They really have. You know, if you put me in a car from like mid 2000s, even mid to some late 2000s cars that were in this price range at the time, you know, they were just awful and just horrible in every way. I mean, this thing is actually okay. It's decent. And I'm a car guy, and I'm telling you that this 2015 base model Corolla isn't like the worst thing in the world. So, you know, that should tell you that a car like this has really come a long way over the last few years. All right, so we're pretty much stopped here, and I wanted to give you an example of the acceleration just so you know I'm not lying. So 0 foot all the way down. So that's 60, and you're gonna have to count for yourself for how long that was. All right, so just finishing up my drive here of the 2015 Corolla. Well, actually not finishing up my drive, finishing up the review. My drive won't be over, unfortunately, for another few days. But, you know, looking at it from that perspective of just being purely for transportation to get from point A to point B, it's not bad. And anybody who would buy this would probably be happy with it, you know, as long as they realize that it's not gonna be fun or interesting or fast in any way whatsoever. And that's just why I could never own a car like this. It's just so... honestly, it's so boring. It's just the most boring thing in the world that ever existed. Everything about it is just a snooze fest, but it works. And for most people, that's enough. It doesn't have to be interesting. So, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you stopped in for the first time, please subscribe and take care. Have a great day.